employment-led economy. If income is not available to the spending population, right, then you can see a decrease in demand. And therefore, you can make, if you do decrease prices, you can make a higher margin and sell less volume. And therefore, you'd really make more profits. So it's a double-edged sword. Another example is we see tremendous opportunity for our CARICOM markets because they're net energy buyers. And therefore, the cost of gas in Jamaica has gone down, which means more available income. The cost of energy, anything that has to do with energy in Barbados have gone down slightly. And the OECS markets and the CARICOM markets are actually benefiting from the lower energy prices, and they need it. We see that we see a potential for growth there, because for a little while now those economies have been slightly depressed. So it's a double-edged sword. If we use the fact that energy prices are lower and that our cost of production is lower, right, it makes our products more competitive, and then we can actually now seek out larger markets to sell those products in, provided that we have the capacity to do so. So I see it as a double-edged sword in our own business. From the economy generally, there is a lot of waste in the economy. And therefore, if the powers that be have less money to spend, then I think we may get better value for money in the short term. So I see it as a benefit in some cases, and in some cases in the local market, with regards to demand, it could be a hindrance if you do know how to innovate and maneuver through those challenges.
I have a slightly different perspective. I really see that sustained low energy prices is bad news for manufacturing in Trinidad. And the reason that I see that is very closely linked to what Roger said, that a large part of the economy is driven by the price of energy and the government and the amount of spending that takes place to drive local consumer demand. A lot of manufacturers depend heavily on Trinidad as the home market. Maybe 50, 60, 70, 80% of your business is generated locally. And if your home market is going through a period of reduced aggregate demand because there's less economic activity as a result of lower energy prices and lower spending by the government, the contraction in your domestic demand will certainly be faster than the rate at which you can grow and compensate for that through your exports, because of the reason that we said. The other thing is that the overall energy cost in most, I'm talking already FMCG, nothing as specific as Roger, but in overall FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods, the overall energy cost is not as significant as, say, the cost of your raw packaging material in commodities, whether it's sugar, cereal, and these and the overhead, which continues to grow. So my position is low energy costs lead to lower economic activity, which leads to lower aggregate demand, which is problematic for manufacturers who have a significant part of their revenue coming from the local economy. It has to be balanced. It has to be balanced.
I think all the points from my perspective have been covered. Not much more that I would add at this point.
Well, thank you. And how many minutes do we have for questions? About 5, 10 minutes. Okay, so please, if you have a question, please raise your hand. We have mics around to give, to share with you. So any questions? Yes, here on the left.
Morning, Professor.
Hi.
How do you see IT helping the infrastructure or supporting infrastructure of the value chain, given all you've said?
Well, I can start off.
Go ahead, Roger.
In our business, we have a very robust IT structure. So the general platform is an IT infrastructure called Microsoft AX. There are two elements of Microsoft AX, which is Enterprise Resource Planning, or ERP, and Material Resource Planning, which is MRP. Now, Enterprise Resource Planning pulls all the accounting elements of the business together in one package. So it integrates consumer management with accounting, with purchasing, with inventory, and so on. But the key element for manufacturers really, and in our business, is the materials resource planning component. And that is directly linked with supply chain management. Because for MRP to work, it means that you have to be able at some level to forecast demand. You have to be able to forecast demand. Most systems deal with what you call legacy buying, and they deal with what you call the length of the supply chain and minimum order quantities or the trigger points and all that. But MRP really forces you to try to forecast demand. And it deals with drawing the inputs into manufacturing based on your demand forecast. So it puts the challenge, moves the challenge really from the operations personnel to challenging the marketing and sales personnel to tell the organization, what do you plan to sell tomorrow, so that we can ensure that the adequate inputs are there to back that up. So there is sophisticated IT infrastructure to help forecast. The real challenge is, on what basis do we forecast? Is it gut? Is it that we could predict the future? Or is it, as Steve Jobs said, a lot of times consumers don't know what they want until you show them. Sometimes you have to show them what they want. So let me give you one example in our business. We have over 30 color shops across the country and in the Caribbean. And one of the things we did to influence demand is that we put up a board in the shop called Future Colors. So we put up 10 colors, and we put the word Future Colors on the board. I don't want to say that there was no empirical research that went into those colors, but we created Future Colors. And I can tell you that those 10 colors are our fastest selling colors. Because the consumer walks in there, they say, wow, these are the future colors. I want that. I want to be in the trend. I want to live in the future. And we use that. We've created a forecast so that we can run our system efficiently. The next thing that we did is to try to create something called just in time, but the forecasting really is just before time. Whereby in the coatings industry, a lot of consumers have access to cable TV now, HGTV. They don't want to paint their home in the same color as their neighbor. So they want a unique color. So we found an increase. Every year we see an increase in what we call mixed colors being sold as opposed to standard colors. So a consumer wants to look through a fan deck, what we call a fan deck, with 4,000 colors, and they pick this shade. And even though the color is very similar, the shades are very similar, my color is not John's color, it's not Paul's color, it's my color. And what we do is that you go to the shop, you get your card, we put your name on it, and this has now become your color. And so what we are trying to do, and I think businesses do that, is they really try not to predict what the demand is going to be, but to really influence what the demand will be, and then work backwards from that. And I think a lesson was learned actually from the pioneers of technology, especially Steve Jobs, with creating products that we didn't know we need, but now we can't do without them. So that's all I like to say. Thank you.
Yes.
We're going to be future people.
Morning. Thanks to the panel. Morning, guys. I'm going back to something Roger said in his opening comment. Yes, I'll go back to it. Did I hear you say that among the challenges are more government incentives, foreign exchange, and so on? And then come back at the end, you're saying, started to talk about the market. So quite rightly, and for paints and for coatings. And by the way, Minerva Gray is Minerva as in Anthony Sapga's family, first color. That was her color, green.
Okay.
But going back to it, didn't I hear you say that in the OECS and the rest of CARICOM, because energy prices, oil prices went down, they have more income, kind of, because cost of goods went down. In the meantime, your imported resins and so on, those would have gone down as well. We have a conversion advantage as well. So don't we now have the capacity to earn more foreign exchange, even in the CARICOM market? So therefore, for us, we should have US accounts or Euro accounts that we are managing from here. So I'm not understanding if we're still dependent on the government, or are we going to use the advantages that we have in the economy as private sector, if you understand where I'm
Okay,
getting at.
I understand your question. Okay, so first of all, I'm not advocating that business becomes dependent on the government. In fact, business in Trinidad and Tobago, the private sector, for a large part, is very much independent of the government. We create our own economy. What I'm saying is, part of the questions that were posed to us had to do with cost of capital. And therefore, if I were trying to raise money on the international market, I can access right now a 0% loan, a 1% loan, a 2% loan, whereas the cost of capital, with very robust negotiations, the lowest I can get is 5%. And if you already have existing debt on your balance sheet, you may have to pay as much as 7%, and some businesses that do have the negotiating power pay more. So that is what I meant by incentive. We have a lot of resources that are allocated elsewhere in the economy. And really and truly, it should be put into areas that will fuel the diversification of the economy. And manufacturing has to play a leading role in that. And that is the point I was making with regards to what the government is doing. We hear a lot of talk about diversification of the economy. And we need to put policy in place to ensure that the economy is diverse. And let me give you an Anson McCall example, or even the Coatings example. Because Anson McCall is a conglomerate, what happens year on year, why the profitability of Anson McCall is sustained, is because when one segment of the business is down, another segment is invariably up. And that is what sustains the revenue and the profitability of the business year on year. And in our coatings business, if we were just selling decorative paint, which really gets most of its demand in the peak season, which is Christmas. Everybody paints in Trinidad. In fact, our household, I think we have just over 400 households. And the average household uses 5 gallons of paint per year. Whereas in Jamaica, it's 3.5 gallons. Whereas in America, it's 2 gallons. We paint more than anybody else, right? And I love that. I love that, right? But the business really is sustained by the fact that we sell decorative paint, we sell automotive paint, we sell industrial and marine paint, and we invariably see right now our industrial sales have cut in half because oil prices have gone down. The energy companies have cut their maintenance budgets. You've seen that a lot of the subcontractors have laid off workers and so on. So that business is cut in half. But for the last couple of years, cars, there's been a tremendous increase in car sales in Trinidad and Tobago. And therefore, automotive business is growing year on year. I was surprised to know that we have close to 800,000 vehicles on the road. Good news for us. Bad news for the traveling public. But what I'm saying is, because the business is diversified, we can weather those storms. And the economy needs to be diversified in order to weather the storms that are ahead of us. And that is the point I was really making.
Yes. And then next is going to be this lady, please, in front.
John, this is for you. I was a bit taken aback that you saw the lower energy costs as maybe in the long term hurting the local market. But when you think in terms of the local market and the size of the local market, and you look at CARICOM, traditional CARICOM markets, which have been flat, as you know, for the last 6 or 7 or maybe more years. And the population there, 7, 8 million max. But when you look at, we're not even going Latin America, take Cuba, take Puerto Rico, DR, Haiti. You move that immediately to 40 million, you know that. Don't you think low energy prices now for manufacturers are going to put us in a much better place?
Component, but someone here mentioned the value chain, and the reality is your cost of energy, businesses are different, but the cost of energy in terms of the total operating or total delivered cost, maybe not that significant. The real value creation opportunities, what companies need to do to enter into Cuba, Dominican Republic, don't forget Haiti, 10 million consumers. People don't think about it. There's 10 million people that need to be fed, or to buy clothes or lighting or whatever. So what we really have to focus on is not the cost side of the equation. Because as I said earlier, you're not going to save yourself to prosperity. We have to look at creating products and brands and have the right distribution through the right channel selection to grow the business. Because we've had low energy costs, right? We've had low energy, and countries have had low energy costs. Some of them are suffering more than Trinidad will, or possibly will face. Ecuador, Mexico, immediately austerity measures have been put in place into Mexico and Ecuador. Once the price of oil dropped below a certain dollar value. We cannot look only internally to drive growth and manufacturing. That's what I'm saying. You know, we have to look at the brand. There are unique things that Trinidadian companies could do to get into Cuba. So I still maintain that as long as the manufacturing sector or manufacturing companies are heavily dependent on a significant part of their revenue coming from Trinidad, lower prices will have a negative impact on the economy and then drive aggregate demand down. You're going to be stuck with a lot of fixed overheads, which will make your exports even less competitive. Right? So don't wait for that to happen. We have to get the right brands, you know. The great example of, I think it was Chevy, maybe 20, 30 years ago when they tried to get into Mexico. You know, one of the great cars that they had in the US was the Nova, right? Chevy Nova. They launched it in Mexico. Nova in Spanish means Nova. It means it doesn't go, right? Chevy Nova. They didn't sell any. So that's why it's a great product. Yeah, that's a true story. So that's what happened in that case. So you have to know your consumer. You have to know your brand. Great car, just change your name. You know, understand the branding, understand what your consumer wants. We have great products, and you're right, 42 million people in just in the Caribbean, you know, 12 million in Cuba, and there are billions of dollars sitting in Miami, right, ready to be invested into that. You know? And I can tell you, I was a director of the business that the joint venture that Nestle has with the Cuban government, and it's a fascinating place, you know, and it's an interesting mix. You know, there is still a legacy of people who understand the value of consumer brands. In fact, the bus stop now, that's just outside the milk factory is called the Parada Nestle. It's the Nestle bus stop, and it's been there for about 50 years. It's a tremendous opportunity, but let's not look only at the cost. You know, we got to think about building brands. We got to think about, you know, building the right products.
Let me jump in and give another example. Let me give a different, a nice perspective. When consumer income is high, we consume a lot of imported goods. When money is flowing, individual income sometimes is not economically spent. So we develop high taste, foreign taste. So when you have a lot of money, you drink whiskey, drink scotch. When money tight, you drink rum, you drink beer, which is what we produce. When I sold cleaning products and the economy was high, the customer consumed a lot of foreign brands. They want Lysol. They want Procter & Gamble. They want these brands. When money tight, they want Lanher. They want clean and white bleach. They want Clorox. They want clean and white. Right? Because most of these products are functionally the same. The new agriculture minister, his first comments was, the government should utilize more locally produced foods. The water served in the parliament is not local water. So, is that a function of, it may be a function that we have too much. And I'm just adding that perspective because there are a lot of good local products. And let me give paper. Money nice. You want Charmin Ultra, Bounty, Scott. What happened to White Cloud? Soft and pretty. Right? You know. And I know my friend Roger Lipak is in the crowd and he wants to kill me, you know. Or Faye, you know. So when things are not as lavish or not as lucrative as they used to be, sometimes we get more sense. And we don't necessarily now have to go on all these buy local campaigns. The consumer now decides to buy local. And therefore, in some cases, when there's a drop in the energy price, and by the way, the energy price at $40-something is still much higher than what the energy price was in the 80s or the early 90s. It means that we make more sober buying decisions, right? And therefore, in some cases, in some companies, it helps the company. So Sasha will sell more makeup. Right now, if they want MAC, everybody in Westmall buy MAC. What happened to Sasha? So that is my perspective on the economy. No Sherwin-Williams. Use Penta. Use Sissons. Right? No foreign macaroni. Buy Swiss. Right? And that is what propels the local economy when there's a decrease in disposable income to the consumer. Right?
Yeah, very good. And the last question from this lady, please.
Hi,
Okay.
good morning, panelists. Good morning, everyone. I just have two concerns, really, to ask or request that you address based on from where you sit. One would be, we all know about the theory and the theoretical aspects of supply chain and the good that it could be, but how do you see us bridging the gap to reality? That's the first. And the second, which is somewhat related, has to do, again, Trinidad-centric culture. How much, especially from the regard of labor, which we all agree, I think it would seem, that labor is a big issue. How much do you see the issue of culture being relevant in the discussion? And realistically speaking, how do you see us bridging as a country, as an economy, as what we are? How do you see us bridging that gap to make all of this possible in this sphere? Thank you.
It's an easy question, right?
Let me take a start of it. Let me make sure I got it right. You want to know how to deal with it in a Trini context and how to bring things to reality, how to make the supply chain effective here. They run all the time. It's how well they run. Okay? I was always taught, keep your lines flowing and keep your warehouses empty. Make sense? Not really, does it? And it can't make sense in Trinidad because we're on an island. And we have to engage from the fact that we're in the hurricane belt. And God is a Trini when it comes to hurricanes, not when it comes to government. And ensure that they don't pass here, right? But our shipping is affected by it. So you have to ensure that your safety stocks are always readily available because a ship is going to get delayed or a plane is going to get delayed. to the point where you have to go into your safety stock to do stuff, and you don't want to shut down your lines to be doing anything. They focused on it, my two colleagues and the prof, about demand. The forecasting in Trinidad, I would say, is atrocious. There's so many different models that you could do. People go to simple spreadsheets, and it's exactly what you said. They use the previous year's sales, and they hope the marketing and salespeople, not to knock them, would give you what they want to do, not tomorrow, but in 6 weeks or 10 weeks' time, so you can get the necessary material in to ensure that things happen. The only way you could do that is proper communication, right? You need to have your regular meetings, depending on the business and its cycle and how it works. You have to ensure that regular meetings are held within the value chain of the operation, and I'm calling it very widely that, to make sure that you can always supply what you want, using your systems to support what it is you have to do. We spoke about IT systems. There have some companies in Trinidad using very advanced technology, right? Very advanced IT systems. They don't use them properly. They don't use them well. They're not set up properly. They don't have the right information, and their inventory is inaccurate, right? Those kinds of things are things that people live day to day inside of here. If you could fix those basic things, and I haven't talked anything advanced and futuristic, you bring it home on the ground to do what you have to do, right? So, it comes back to who runs it. It comes back to what is demanded of you.